Hey guys, I'm Tushar. I'm a product designer. I currently live in New Delhi right now, and I have been designing for the past 10 odd years. I've worked in various industries like travel, food, instant messaging, and I'm currently working at Revolut as a senior product designer. Today I'll be talking about design to code and how you can get there in the fastest way possible, and how to make everybody's life easy, like while doing that. So the first thing we're going to look at is like what the process looks like today and how it is in the current scheme of things. And then we can look at a few things, a few ways to improve it and make it better. And then finally, we're going to take a sneak peek into the future and see what's possible. So let's get started. So there are four major stages to the whole process of getting design to production. First off, we've got design, then we've got handoff, and then we've got development and testing. And then eventually there's a whole bit about taking it live. So we're going to look at each of these stages and understand what goes on in all of these stages, basically. So let's take a scenario. For example, let's say that you're building a travel app and you already have an existing app, and there's a search results page in which you display your hotel rooms. And say that you want to add a new listing to it. Say that it's COVID time and you want to call out, those hotels which have specifically designed, like they've sanitized rooms and they have special features for this whole COVID, traveling during COVID situation. And this is something you want to do urgently. So you find out that there is an existing pattern that you could probably use, a component that you have in your library, which you can probably modify and use it. Now you do that, and then your design is basically ready. And then you're ready for the next step in the process, which is basically, say, handoff process. Now, in this scenario, what you basically do is you showcase your design to the tech stakeholders, to the developers and your product managers and stuff. And you realize what is feasible, you get feedback on stuff. And at this point, two things can basically happen. The designs that you've modified could either be possible, they could work as it is, and it could be implemented easily in code and you can take it forward. Or there could be a possibility that the developers tells you that, hey, this is not feasible, you can't do this in the same way in like code. And then you would have to go back to the drawing board, create a new component, or figure out another component that could work. So let's work with the scenario that the component that you created could not be coded, and then the developer has to actually code it. And which brings us to the next step in the process, which is development and testing, in which the developer would be creating the modified component and making sure that it works in the right way. And it doesn't break any other, the modifications that you're making are not breaking any other place where that instance of that component is used in the code. So this makes the process a little bit complicated. You see, by modifying the component in a certain way, which was not feasible in the component, you've bought a change which needs to be tested out in a very, very deep way, because there's something which was not intended for that component to do, and which increases the time for you to get that component out. So which also brings us to the next step. Once all of this is done, like when the component ready and it's been extensively tested, you basically come to the app review place, in which case in this phase of the process, you have to send the app to basically the app store, and then it is reviewed by the app store. And once it is reviewed, then it can be downloaded and updated by the users to be to consume the new feature that you have created. And overall, it just takes way too long. Like if you think about it from the start, like when you've designed the thing to you're actually launching it, it takes 2 to 3 weeks, and that's crazy. So let's look at how we can make this better, how we can improve it. So the fundamental problem, if you think about it, is that we need to reduce the time it takes to convert design to code, basically. Like that's the basic fundamental problem. How do you get from design to code in the fastest way possible? Now, one thing that we can probably do, the one very easy thing to do, like, is that we can make sure that our designs can be implemented with the least amount of development effort. All right. And now there's a lot of things that we already do for trying to achieve this basically. Let's have a look at them. So we have style and design tokens. We've basically aligned how we communicate styles to developers very easily and fundamentally in a way that is one-to-one matching. Say that you have a red 500 colors. The developer knows exactly what color code to use in web, and then similarly on iOS and Android. So it's a one-to-one match. Similarly with other stuff like frames and views. In design and code, we both have these abstractions of frames and having views. This is also a one-to-one match. But then when it comes to like design components and code components, it's not a one-to-one match. There is a it is slightly flawed in the way it is implemented. Now, basically the design components are not a one-to-one match to the code components. It's not the same. And let me demonstrate this with an example first. So say you have a heading component and you have a subheading and you want to like use, just the heading and you don't want the subheading. So in design, doing this is very simple. You would just remove, hide the subheading layer and the component would compensate on its own. And then you would just have a heading with perfect paddings everywhere. Now, the thing is, this is like super duper cool. Like this was not possible before, but with the tooling that we have today, it is possible. Now, the thing is, code is not the same. Like if I were to like do this in the same way, like in code, it might not work in the exact same way. Let me demonstrate. So if I were to remove, say, the heading, the subheading from here, now we see that this component is structured the same way the component in code is. So the paddings are off over here. And the reason for that is that the paddings are not implemented the same way as in the code. So this creates a sort of like, the outcomes are not predictable anymore, because the way you implement things in design are not the same in code. So you've got this difference over here. And the reason for this is that code inherently is driven by APIs. Now, like, what are APIs, if you would ask? Like, so in code, when you want to change things, you have a predefined way of doing it. Let me show an example to explain that a bit. So let's say you have a button called, you have a button over here. This is the code. This is how it would look like. It has a size large, it has a type primary, and it has a button title, which is reflected on top. Now, this is basically the API, size large, type primary. This is the code telling the button how to behave. And these are like the predefined things that are defined about the button. So like if the coder were to change it to secondary, a number of styles would change and the button would react in a different way. So these are predefined. There's like a primary, secondary, tertiary, and this is what the API is basically. It's a set of predefined modifications that are allowed on a component. But in design, it's not the same basically. In design, you can pretty much change anything, any way possible. Now, the thing is, as the tools that we are using grow, we are seeing that there's something very familiar like this in code, in design also. So we've got in Figma, we've got something known as variants, which are, if you look at it, pretty much the same thing. You have size large, you have size large, and then you can have type primary. Then the same can be done in the variant as well. This is sort of like bridging the gap. Now you have a tool to sort of align your, design API to your code API. And this is magical. So this lets you predictably change your designs, modify your designs, and the same can be expected out of the code component as well. So this is basically magic. You can change your design components and the code components, and it'll all work the same way as you expect it to. There's not going to be a lag. You exactly know what is possible in code right from your design tools itself, which bridges the gap and makes you move forward. Now, here are a couple of tips that can help you get started with using design APIs. The first advice I would give you is to match the design API to the code API one-to-one. Make sure that they have it like completely aligned, because the slightest of differences can have a major impact on when it's actually getting to implementation. And speaking the same language can actually get you a long way into moving from design to code faster. Next is it's not just about naming, it's also about structure of the component. So structurally how it's designed should match how it's designed in the code also. And with the way that we have tools today, with auto layout and stuff, all of that we have, it's very much possible to do this. Another advice I would have is that you should probably involve developers as early as possible, because the more involved they are, the better components you have, and the better components you have, the faster you can get to actually production code faster. Lastly, I would say check out Nathan Curtis and his article on component API. It's all of it is there. It's great, and it's been one of the materials that I've been using to understand what component API is. So check it out. So let's take a backseat and look at what we've been doing. So this is the design process again. We had design, we had handoff, dev testing, and live. Now, component API basically helps you with handoff and dev testing. But let's look at how we can make the design process better. What else can we do to make that part better? Introducing snippets, or you can also call them stackables, or you can call them modules. So these are like components that you can organize. Think of them as Legos. You can organize them, combine them in different ways to create as many components as you want. So basically not components, but like auto layouts that you can create. And this is a great way of having a drag and drop editor to create anything that you want. Simply drag stuff, combine them together, and you've got a new layout which can actually work, because basically they're just made of stacks of components. And what this does is that it allows you to iterate very quickly and create stuff very fast just by dragging and dropping without really actually getting the design. And it makes design accessible to anyone. Say that you have a marketing team and they want to put out an emailer. Now it's very simple. They can have an email design kit in which they can drag and drop stuff. They can have a headers, a footers, and a set of components that they can drag, drop, combine, and create n number of email layouts without the help of any designer, basically making design accessible to everyone. Now, the same could be done for form kits, and same could be done for other things like product managers, developers. Anybody could use these kits to basically communicate ideas, create designs, and start contributing to the whole process of product design. So the next question is, how do you build these snippets basically? There are a couple of advice that I would have for you. One is that ideally each snippet should have one logical purpose. It should not deviate from that. And an example would be like a text field or an image box. So they have a very defined purpose, right? And they should do that. And the next advice is that the variance of if you have variance on your components, and if you're creating one of the snippets, it should not change the snippet completely. It should still allow you to have the same basic functionality. Say, instead from one image, you can probably have two images and stuff. And the last advice that I have for you all is that limit the number of snippets. Think of them as kits. So the larger the kit you have, the more number of components you are, it gets harder for people to consume it. But if you have them in small kits, which you can quickly put together, it is much faster to use them and create relevant designs out of them. So you don't have to hunt through 100 components to figure out what you need to create stuff. You just have to go through 3 or 5 based on the purpose the kits have been created for. Okay, so we are here at the final part of the presentation, which is sneak peek into the future. So I'm going to basically show you what the future could look like. So let's get started. So you guys remember this? We had, snippets to help us. We learned that snippets can help us make design faster and accessible. And then we also talked about how design API can make handoff and dev and testing much faster and make everybody's life easier. But what about this last part of the journey? How do we make this part interesting? How do we take the part of taking the design to code live and make this better? So before doing that, let's look at how the step is. Let's take a deeper look at what really happens in this step. So the developer basically creates, once the developers are ready with their thing, the development is done. They create an APK, an app file, which is also known as build by developers. And then they send it to the app store. So, and then at this point, the app store people review the app and figure out whether this should be launched. They have a couple of compliances checked that they do at this point to ensure that this is okay and safe to be launched to the public. And once it is there, once it is reviewed, it is approved by the app store, it is launched. And then users can start downloading it. Now, if you take a deeper look at what's happening is that this file, the IPA file or APK file for Android, is being transferred from the developers and distributed by the App Store. Now, this is a super duper long process if you think about it. You're getting your design, you're getting your code, and then it has to be approved, then it has to be downloaded. It takes a lot of time. And this is a major bottleneck in getting time critical things out to the users in the fastest way possible. Now, there's a solution for this, and for that, we need to understand, we need to dig deeper a bit more. So let me show you first how the app actually works. So the app that we have is just a set, and it needs internet to work. And the data that it needs, it all comes from a different server. Now let's explore that a bit more. Say that you have an app and it's a travel app, and then you're looking for a hotel in Delhi. So you tell that to the app, and then that app sends a request to the server. You can think of server as a repository of all the data that is there, and then you can make requests to it, and it can return some data to you based on whatever the request that you made. Basically, the app asks what to show to the user, and based on the results, like the app, based on what the app has sent, the request that the app has sent to the server returns some data, and then that data, app takes that data and decides how to show that data, and then creates a view which the user eventually sees. So basically, if you see what happening is, user tells app what it wants to see, the app asks the server what to show, and then app takes that data and combines it with its own logic about how to show it and shows it to the user. Now the thing is, what if we could tell the server not just to tell the app what to show, but also how to show it? Say that the user asks for some data, and then the app asks what to show, and then the app would not just send the data, but also tell them that, hey, you need to create a list of cards which using this data, and then you need to also have a list of cards on top which has this data. So all of this is coming from the server itself. And then this is you're basically changing the layout, the designs, and making changes to the app dynamic basically. So if you think about it, you're driving the UI, the logic of what's being shown directly from the front end, like directly from the server itself. And this is possible today, and this is called server-driven UI. And this can help get critical changes out faster, like stuff like COVID and stuff, by just telling the app what to show and how to show. One point that I've missed about this is that these layouts should exist in the app. Like if these two cards are already there in the app, it can tell, hey, use this card, take these data and show this. So that's basically what's happening there. Coming back. So this is basically what server-driven UI is. And this can drastically reduce the time you spend into pushing out new designs to your users just by using the stuff that you already have on the app. Now we can take this a step further actually. So if let's look at all the things that we learned today. We learned about design API, we learned about snippets, we recently learned about server-driven UI, and we already know about Figma and all the cool plugins that it has. So say if we combine all of this together, and we could probably do something like this. We could design something using, the snippets that we've created, and then which all are designed using design APIs, and then we can run a plugin to generate basically a code, and then that could be just pushed to the server and the designs would be out. So this could be possible in the future. Now, this is something which I'm experimenting with right now. It's not ready, but I would love to show you guys a demo of this. So here is an example. So here's a card. This is an existing component, and I've gone ahead and changed a few attributes about it. So instead of one image, I have two images. Let's add some real content to it. Copying and pasting it here. Okay. And now it's time to generate the code. So I go to my plugin. And here's the code. So it basically takes whatever plugins we have and take all of those attributes that we defined, the design API, and converts it into this code. So if you see that this completely matches what we have in the variant panel as well. So all of the variants are there. There are two images, there are two logos, and the button, all of that, all of what we've done, design decisions that we've taken on the code have been converted into actual, code. And this is what this future could look like. You could design stuff, create stuff, and then launch it directly to the public. This is what the possibilities that are there in the future. So guys, thank you so much for listening to me. And this is something what the future can hold for us. And I would love to talk to you all about this. And if you have any more questions about, design APIs or, server-driven UI or any of that stuff, please feel to reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is right there, Tushar Debnath. And it's been a pleasure talking to you guys and sharing all of my learnings with you guys. Thank you.